Hi, today we're going to talk about writing your body paragraphs. You have 3 body paragraphs, and just like with the planner, I modeled the DNA paragraph. I'm going to take that information from the planner and show you what your paragraph is going to look like. So make sure that you have your orange planning document in front of you, and we're going to do this real quick so that you can go and write your second and third paragraph for me. We always start with writing the body paragraphs because that's where most of your information is. Your introduction is going to introduce your body paragraphs, and your conclusion is revisiting and just reminding people, your readers, what was in your body paragraph. So you can't write your introduction or conclusion until you really write those main body paragraphs. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to color code the information, and if you can see, if you're looking at your orange planning document, you can see you have a main idea. You have your topic, of course. You have your main idea sentence. You have the define piece where you actually define the science. You have the explain piece where you're going to explain what the evidence looks like at a crime scene, and then what the experts do with that evidence at the lab or wherever to catch the criminal. There's 2 parts to that. And then your example, which is your case file. Okay? All right, now I'm going to show you that I have, let me get the whole thing. I have this already written here. And you guys are actually going to be able to copy and paste this paragraph right into your essay. Okay, I'm going to, just like I let you have that first paragraph for the planner, the first planning piece, I'm going to let you have this first body paragraph so you have a model. Okay, so let's go through this. Let me read it once. DNA can help solve crimes. DNA is in the cells in the body that carry information on how a person will look and act, and it can be found in blood, skin, saliva, and hair. Quote, investigators collect items that could have been touched or worn by persons involved in a crime because they may contain DNA material. These could include things like hats, gloves, clothing, toothbrushes, cigarette butts, cups, and silverware. Unquote. DNA can be analyzed by a process that creates a graph called an electropherogram. Since the graph will show you the genetic material in the DNA, comma, investigators use this graph to match DNA to criminals in a national database called CODIS. In the case of the Hungry Bandits, 3 men robbed a restaurant, but they left DNA evidence on the food that they ate. Investigators collected the food evidence left at the crime, and scientists analyzed it at a lab through a process called polymerase chain reaction. First, they created the DNA profiles, then they entered it into CODIS, and finally, they found the criminals. Okay, so that's about 9 sentences if you count them. And like I told you, your paragraph should be somewhere between 8 and 12. If it's fewer than 8 sentences, you're definitely missing something. If it's more than 12, your reader is going to fall asleep, okay? So somewhere between 8 and 12. Let's take a look at these sentences. DNA can help solve crimes. I'm going to make that pink. That is your topic sentence. That's what this whole paragraph is about. Now, I'm hoping you'll develop those sentences into better sentences. Now, if DNA helps solve crimes, photography can help solve crimes, footwear and tire tracks can solve crimes, if those are very basic topic sentences, and you could use those for each of your 3 body paragraphs, but I would really like you to develop those into something more interesting. We'll talk about that a little later. Okay, the next step is red, and it's the definition of DNA. So the definition of DNA goes from here to about here. This is the definition of DNA and DNA evidence, I think. Actually, I think this is probably it. And it might take 1 or 2 sentences. This is just 1, but 2 is probably better. Okay? DNA is the cells in the body that carry information on how a person will look and act, and it can be found in blood, skin, saliva, and hair. Okay, so that's the definition. Now I want you to explain it. And again, I said that's 2 parts. First, we need to explain what the evidence looks like at a crime scene. Then we have to explain what a scientist does with that evidence to catch a criminal. So we're going to go from here all the way down to here. And what did I say? That's green? Yes, that's going to be green. So let me make this green. Investigators collect items that could have been touched or worn by persons involved in a crime because they may contain DNA material. These could include like hats, gloves, clothing, toothbrushes, cigarette butts, cups, and silverware. DNA can be analyzed by a process that creates a graph called an electrophoregram. Since the graph will show you the genetic material in the DNA, investigators use this graph to match DNA in a national database called CODIS. The first half tells you what the evidence looks like at a crime scene. The second half tells you what the scientists do with it. If you want full credit on these paragraphs, I need to see both parts, okay? And then the final thing is our example. And notice I named our example. If your article has a title, if your case file has a title, you should mention it. You kind of need to help your reader transition in and explain that, okay, now we're talking about something different. We're no longer talking about DNA directly, we're talking about a crime. You could also say something like, an example of a crime that uses DNA to solve it is whatever. But you can see, in the case of the Hungry Bandits, 3 men robbed the restaurant, but they left DNA evidence on the food that they ate. Investigators collected the food evidence that left at the crime, and scientists analyzed it at a lab through a process called polymerase chain reaction. First, they created the DNA profiles, and then they entered into CODIS, and finally, they found the criminals. Okay, hopefully you did this right along with me. Now you can copy and paste this into your own document. See ya.